Fernando Alonso. It doesn't feel like a second ago that we were sat here talking about him during his 2018 season with McLaren and that woeful Honda engine and just the years of complaining, and then of course all the other things that came before it, including his 2 world titles with that team of Renault Sport. And of course that is what he is returning to in the news the last few days. Fernando Alonso, the Spanish world champion, the only Spanish world champion, will be returning to Renault Sport in the 2021 season. I say return, and a few of you guys might be watching and thinking, really? Return? And that's right, all those years ago he was at the team. To be honest, it kind of took me by surprise. Of course I already know he drove for Renault, but thought, return? Really? And then it goes, oh yeah, that's right, he is. So yes, Fernando Alonso won 2005 and 2006. He's had a very turbulent season. So from that he went to McLaren in 2007, involved in the controversial Spygate scandal, which of course cost McLaren up to, I think it was $100,000. Then of course he went back to Renault Sport, involved in another gate scandal, but this time what was called a crash gate. Now that involved the inaugural round, the 2008 round of the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix, where his teammate Nelson Piquet Sr. was supposed to allegedly crashed what the team told him to do so Fernando could win the race. Now even though Fernando wasn't really involved, he didn't really know much about what was happening there, he was in trouble, team were in trouble, Nelson was in trouble, and it did lead to a bit of a collapse of the team, and of course that's where they pulled out a few years later. And subsequently that could have been a reason why Fernando left. But he got the call up in 2010 to the big seat, the one that you always have to answer, or in Sebastian Vettel's terms you have to, which is Scuderia Ferrari. Of course he stayed there from 2010 to 2014. He's remembered, and probably one of the highlights of his career outside the World Championships was of course his 2012 battles with Sebastian Vettel to win the 2012 championship. It didn't happen that way, but it was a two-way fight going on to a very rainy and a very changeable conditions in Interlagos, the Brazilian Grand Prix. Of course, Sebastian Span, Fernando had to put up a great fight to claw back the championship, but as I say, it didn't go his way, but he is definitely remembered for that. And obviously the very sad 1,000-yard stare he does outside the car on that day. Then after 2014, he jumps ship to McLaren. Jenson and Fernando in the Honda era returned for 2015. It's celebrations at McLaren. It's an amazing achievement. And what follows is just absolutely woeful. A terrible car, just no pace, no nothing. And even though Jenson struggles, it seems like Fernando either has the wrong end of the stick, just has the worst car, if you can believe that, because he does a lot of complaining. And of course in 2015, the first season back, he comes out with the very famous GP2 engine. Very synonymous. To be honest, Jordan, if Fernando Alonso is known for that statement alone, you could say. I say a turbulent time at McLaren, of course, going with Jenson and then Belgian driver Stoffel van Dorn before he leaves the sport at the end of 2018. Abu Dhabi is his last race. Seb and Lewis, of course, 2 veterans who were inspired when they were growing up. They watching Fernando, took him out onto the staff industry and did some donuts, kind of a thank you Fernando, gracias, and hasta luego, enjoy your retirement, enjoy your chasing of the Triple Crown, which of course he has wanted to do. He's done Le Mans, he's done IndyCar. Of course IndyCar did not work out very well for him. 24-hour Le Mans worked out quite well for him. But there was one thing he was just failing to get, which of course was that achievement. And the only one driver that has done that, and he is the British driver of Graham Hill, of course, all those years back, and of course the dad of Damon Hill. So Fernando Alonso chasing those things, but there was always one thing missing, and that was was he still the GOAT of Formula 1? As I said at the start, he does divide opinions whether people think he is the best, or if he's not. Is he a crybaby? Is he? I could sit here for hours and go on about this, but I'm not going to. We're going to give our opinions, not yours, our opinions. I'm joking, of course it will be yours as well, but our opinions on Fernando's return. Jordan, 2021, he is replacing Daniel Ricciardo, who goes to McLaren, of course, Fernando's old team. He will partner French driver Esteban Ocon at the team. He is returning, but as I said, it's a very strange atmosphere. See, Renault were around, he left Renault, he went back to Renault, then he left Renault for Ferrari and McLaren, and now he's back. Of course, he'll have to work with Cyril Abiteboul, that Renault power unit, a young Esteban who, as I say, in my opinion, I think he is going to be the lead of the team. So Fernando will still play second fiddle to Esteban, who, as I say, just looks like he is the implemented leader of the team. It's the French driver, French team, and yeah, I just get that kind of vibe. So, how do you think he will do? So, first race of 2021, Australia, going forward from this season. How will a Fernando Alonso do in that 2021 Renault back on the grid after 2 years out? What do you think?
Well, I think he'll be rusty for starters. I mean, well, it depends what kind of a car Renault build him. You know, they've been promising championship winning cars for the past 2-3 years now, and they haven't really delivered. And that's one of the reasons why Daniel Ricciardo is leaving the team to go to McLaren. He didn't believe in the project. It's going to be interesting to see how Alonso does on his return to Formula One. A lot of people are saying that they're surprised by this, and I'm not surprised in the slightest. I was like, oh, right, okay, Alonso's coming back. Yeah, there was talk of it. It's never really left him since he left the sport. It's always been, oh, is Alonso's going to return? Is this just a see you later, not a goodbye type of thing? And judging by Vettel's goodbye message, which has been re-released now, you know, he said, goodbye, Alonso, see you when you return. So Vettel knew something. You know, Alonso was like, I'll be back, but I don't know when. And funny that he also said that he would be back when he got a car that he could win the World Championship in. He's went to Renault. I don't know if he's got his years confused. I don't know if he's, you know, took a bank to the head and he thinks it's 2005 again. You know, and he thinks that Renault have got a World Championship winning car again. But it's 2021. It will be 2021 when he comes back. Renault are not the team they used to be, Fernando. Someone needs to tell him. In quick. Maybe they've been showing him some wrong data. But, I mean, yeah, Renault are a very topsy-turvy team, but I think Alonso coming into the team, you know, you're right there, like, it has divided the F1 community into two. You know, you've got them really passionate Fernando Alonso fans who didn't want him to leave the sport in the first place, and you got those who just don't like him whatsoever. I'm kind of in the part of that. Yeah, I don't hate him, but I don't love him at the same time. I respect him as a driver. As a driver, I've said he's world class. He's absolutely brilliant. And as a person, he does bring some sort of toxic environment with him, which does, as you've seen over the years, it hindered him at Ferrari. It hindered him at his both stints at McLaren in a way, and a little bit in his second stint at Renault. And yeah, this will be his third stint at Renault. I think he's the only ever driver to go back and forth from a team 3 times. Mental, isn't it? So, you know, Alonso back to the sport. What does this mean for Renault? Is this a good thing for Renault? Like I said before, as a driver, this is I think for Renault, I think this is a win situation for them. I think this is really, really good. They want to go forward now. Before I add anything else, I'm on about Alonso as a driver first of all. Before anyone jumps in straight away, because I know what's coming. By the way, but as a driver for Alonso, Renault is perfect. Renault getting Alonso, that's a really good thing in terms of going forward. He brings a lot of experience. Over 300 Grand Prix, by the way. 306, I might have been, to be exact. I could be wrong with that. But it's over 300, I know that. So he brings a brilliant, ton of experience. He's been there before. He knows the area. He knows the team. And I still think there's people there who were there in Alonso's days. So it's not like he's a stranger. He knows the place. He knows the factory. So, yeah, he'll fit in straight away. Immediately, he'll know what feedback to give, what to say, and how to say it, and and just point them in the right direction going forward. We did see this with Michael Schumacher coming into Mercedes. It didn't work out the way maybe people wanted it to. You know, Schumacher winning races on the podiums every so often. But I mean, ever since he's left the team, look at where Mercedes are now. Was that down to Schumacher? Partly, I would believe partly it was. So maybe, you know, getting in Alonso is what Renault need going forward. And as a driver, it's perfect. And for Ocon wise anyway, learning off Fernando Alonso, driving skills, giving feedback, perfect. Absolutely perfect. But we have been here before with Fernando Alonso. Now this is kind of the downside to this, you know, Alonso coming into the side. Because he's been at projects before with McLaren. And Fernando Alonso has been here before with McLaren, his last project. You know, he signed for the team in 2015, going back to Honda Power, trying to relive those really good days of the 1990s and 1980s. And it didn't work out at all. The power unit was bad. Alonso was always at the back. It wasn't where he wanted to be. And ultimately, it failed. It pretty much forced him to leave the sport, get away from it. And it just, everywhere he went, it just plagued him being in the sport. And I think that affected him in a way where he wanted to take some time out of the sport altogether. And personally, I wasn't expecting him coming back until these rumours started circulating again, and then it became more and more apparent that he would be coming back. So who's to say that this project is going to be working this time? Fernando Alonso is almost, I think he's 40 years old, so he's not a young pup anymore, so he's at the end of his career in terms of racing wise. And is he going to be patient enough to continue on for another couple of years with Renault, challenging for race wins and potentially championships? Because it didn't work out at Ferrari, it didn't work out at McLaren. Who's to say it's going to work out with Renault? Who's to say he's going to have that kind of similar sort of patience as to what he had back in the day? Because Alonso wants to win now, and like I said, he wants to come back into Formula 1 with a race-winning team. But Renault aren't that anymore. They promised Ricciardo, we're going to give you podiums, we're going to give you race wins and all this, and they signed him as a marquee driver, right? Okay, us and Ricciardo are going to go hand in hand into the sunset and dominate the sport. And it hasn't worked. And within a year, he's out the door and going off to McLaren. So bringing in Alonso, is it a statement, or is it Alonso believes in what we've got to offer, and maybe he can wangle his way and get as much as he can out of the car? Because Alonso in that Honda powered car, it was absolutely terrible. It was awful. Alonso did a better job than what a lot of other drivers would have done, and that's where the driver thing comes in. Alonso as a driver is brilliant, one of the best Formula 1 has ever had, in terms of you look at his 2012 season, he dragged that heap of rubbish of that Ferrari car into nearly a world championship winning car. How? You look at Felipe Massa. Felipe Massa is no pushover. He's not a terrible driver. All right, he was number 2, but he still wasn't a bad driver, and he was well down the field with that car. And in previous years, he was more or less, doing all right for himself, but in that season, he didn't do well because the car was rubbish. Alonso did pretty well. So it's just that case of is Alonso going to be sticking around for quite some time, and seeing out this project and maybe completing what Renault had started out to do when they first came into the sport as well? So who knows? That's a big question, really. Lyle, as well. The question back to you. Like I said before, we've been here before with Fernando Alonso in terms of projects. Renault have got a project on the go to be back at the front. McLaren had the same thing back in 2015, and that didn't work. Alonso lost patience. Relationships fell immediately. Him, Ron Dennis, everyone just. It wasn't a good atmosphere at all at McLaren. Cyril Abiteboul, he's not exactly everyone's cup of tea, not exactly everyone's favourite person. So, do you think that this is going to work? Do you think Alonso going to Renault is going to push Renault to being a world championship winning team once again, or even a race winning team once again? Has he got that in him, and has he got the patience to go on and do that?
Well, the first thing that when you were saying there about Fernando Alonso, has he got the patience to wait with Renault? And I think the one reason why I don't think people like Fernando too much, or kind of on that side of not liking Fernando, is the fact that firstly, of course, as you said, he's involved with Spygate, he's involved with Crashgate, Fernando always had the tag of some drama following him. But the thing is, and especially for me as well, when he came back to McLaren in 2015, and it was supposed to be a massive, basically Formula 1 reborn, Jenson Button, a great driver of the sport. Fernando Alonso, of course, great driver of the sport. Ron Dennis had a great team of McLaren with the Honda engine back. The first time Honda had been in Formula 1 for a very long time. Again, since Jenson Button, of course, Jenson was the last victor. Of course, until Max beat that in 2019 Austria, of course, when Honda were powering Red Bull. When Fernando was at McLaren, when he was doing races, and again, just what I said there at the start, about the quote that kind of became infamous. Fernando Alonso just, even though he had a bad car, and Jenson had a bad car, as you said there, the McLarens were abysmal, Fernando would just always seem to be the one who would complain about it. We had radio messages, and every time you saw Fernando, the Fernando radio message, or when David Crawford go one set Martin, and then it would say F Alonso, you just knew it was going to be a complaint. He says GP2 engine. There was one where I think it's in Canada one year, I think it's Canada 2016, where he's told to save fuel, and he says I don't want. And then he adds, these drivers are making us look like amateurs. And I was just I know that he's right, of course, because McLaren had an absolute pile of, dog whatever outside. But Jensen was always the one who would just seem to get on with it. And then Stoffel, I mean, again, I know Jensen obviously had more power than Stoffel. Stoffel in his first season, he couldn't really complain, but Jensen just got on with it. And mainly a lot of the team just did. Fernando was the only driver. Fernando just expected a lot more. It's like he started his first job at Levi's and expected to be wearing Armani on the job. Obviously, that's not going to be the case. You're going to be wearing Levi's. It's not a dig at Levi's, by the way. It sounded like it was. It's not. You're just going to...
Other clothing brands are available, by the way.
You're just going to be in that same car that Jensen is. And it just seemed like that Fernando just was kind of... He was just moaning. He was complaining. He didn't like the craft he was in. And that in turn made him not a very nice driver. Fernando, when he was at Ferrari, was adored because he treated the Tifosi, and he treated, just being in Formula 1 like a lot happier. He was a front runner, but even when Ferrari were on the back foot, like 2013 and even 2014 when he was with Kimi Räikkönen in the new V6 era, and of course Mercedes were the top dogs. Even then, he still had, he was upbeat. He was the leader of Ferrari. He kept the Tifosi happy and things like that. And then we just saw this total demolition of Fernando, not just in what he could do in the car, because the car wasn't good, but I think we just saw a different side of Fernando, like he wasn't happy in the sport. And to be honest, we weren't very happy seeing him. And they said there, Jordan, about the 300 Grand Prix. I remember so Fernando and Jensen hit 300. I think it was kind of around the same mark. And Jensen was like, we were so more happier to see Jensen get to 300 than Fernando. And of course, I know Jensen's British, but we'd still been like with Fernando, like you're wearing a Fernando top, we still obviously have a lot of support for Fernando, but we're just more happy to see Jensen get to 300 than Fernando was. And that alone, obviously, as I say, alongside the Spygate and Crashgate, even though he wasn't involved, obviously that was quite harsh, because even though he wasn't involved, he did feel the backlash of it. Obviously, Flavio got sacked and banned from Formula 1 indefinitely. Nelson got banned for 1 year, and that ultimately fell. That's why Renault obviously fell apart at the end of the 2010 season. It took a few years out, partnered with Lotus, and of course, the rest is history. Coming back into the sport a few years ago, and obviously doing a good job of rebuilding themselves up. But Fernando Alonso's biggest, I would say, failure in that way is just his attitude and what happened at McLaren. I know that he had a bad car, but he wasn't the best driver. He wasn't the best person in that situation. He did get some okay results. For example, he got I know it's only small mercies, but he got pole position in, I think it was Q1 of Silverstone 2017. And I know that's only the smallest mercy you could ever see. Like when I sat here last year and I said Pierre Gasly is a great driver, he got P1 in FP1 in Silverstone, which actually is around a year ago to this day. I think, what day is coming up? The 11th. I think tomorrow is 1 year to the day that Pierre Gasly got P1 in FP1. So that's a stat attack for the ages, that yes. So getting back on I lose my train of thought a lot. So yes, Fernando Alonso, I think that it hindered him a little bit. But going to the ultimate question, Jordan, yes, is it going to work with Renault? That's the thing. I mean, firstly, they're getting back Fernando Alonso in that time, but it was a very long time ago. So obviously, Cyril Abiteboul, I can't even imagine he's ever opened the old previous owner book of what Flavio Briatore wrote in that about how he runs the team. I think it has moved on from them. And as I said there, before about Renault coming back into Formula 1, to be honest, in a little bit of a build. They were very famous. Probably, I might be kind of jumping the gun a little bit, but one of their most famous, most successful times in Formula 1, especially recently, was of course their 4 World Championships, with Red Bull. Red Bull fan, 3 World Championships, what? 4 World Championships with Red Bull. But they've done a very good job of getting back onto the grid, Jordan. They've hired some great people. Obviously, Cyril is a very good. Well, not very good. He's a good team principal, but actually no, he is good. He's better than Gunnar Steiner, for example. Controversial statement. Comments. Get in the comments.
Is this agree or disagree?
It was actually. We had a Gunnar statement the other day. I don't think we've had a Cyril statement yet, but there we go. There's a Cyril statement. So yeah, anyway, Renault have got some good people in, and they've had some great drivers. Of course, had some really, really good drivers. Even looking at Carlos Sainz. Then of course you got Nico Hülkenberg. Of course now Daniel Ricciardo, Esteban Ocon, and then and of course now Fernando Alonso. So they're doing a very good job of building themselves back up, and of course 2019 hasn't gone the way, as Jordan said there, with Danny Rick, hasn't gone the way that anyone would have wanted. I think this is a good move for Renault. So Renault will be sitting there, and two things will go on. Again, as you just said there, Jordan, the experience and to be honest, I would say the hunger of Fernando to come back, because it has seemed like he wanted to come back. I thought with Fernando it would have been a bit of a pull, a bit of a drag. I saw as soon as I'd see a Twitter statement or something where Fernando would say, I didn't really want to go back. I wanted to, go back into IndyCar, or I wanted to, go back with Porsche into the 24-hour Le Mans. As soon as I saw something that would say he didn't want to be with Renault, that's when I would think it's a waste of time. There's no point in getting him back. But it does seem like he wants to be in Formula One. So for Renault, I think they're getting a great thing. I think the team is doing really well by getting that man for the experience. Of course, as you said there, being alongside Esteban Ocon, teaching him the ropes. I don't think that Esteban will become a better driver because he's alongside that, because we do look at people like Stoffel Van Dorn. Stoffel, okay driver, wasn't given his best chance in Formula One. I think he was only in for 1 or 2 seasons, obviously behind Fernando and Jensen. Obviously partnered him in the last season. He didn't improve massively because of being alongside Fernando, but I guess being teammates with obviously the world champion would have helped. So it will be good for Esteban. It will be good for the team. In terms of exposure, and of course we don't really know what it will bring, but I would have thought in terms of exposure it would be quite good. Because again, like a bit like Williams with Robert Kubica last year, we'll be looking at Renault and going, oh wow, that's Fernando Alonso. A little bit like Robert as well. He's a little bit like he's a man of kind of 2 generations, if that makes sense. Like Robert, we had the old Robert Kubica, obviously, who, a lot of people were amiss by that. And, when you look back at obviously what he did achieve was pretty decent. And then, of course, Robert, when he was at Williams, it's a little bit like Fernando. As I just said there, the Fernando of Renault, and the first stint in McLaren, and then the second stint at Renault, and even maybe Ferrari, you might not know much about it. And then the second generation, obviously we're starting off with the McLarens, where you might know a little bit about it and the legacy of Fernando Alonso, but now we're starting the new Fernando coming back. So I do think it's good for Renault. In terms of Fernando coming back, I think you made a good point there. The patience, I'm not sure. It's a little bit like Sebastian Vettel, the mindset. What's he in Formula One for now? Is he just there to support the team? Is he just there to, a bit like a Kimi Räikkönen? Because we all know Kimi's just there for... And no jokes, he's not there for a bit of a fun time. I know he said that at the end of Netflix, but he's really not. He's there to, 100% seriousness. But he's there to support the team, and that's what's great about him. He has less pressure because of that. He's there to support the team. The limelight, lesser than it was, obviously, when he was at Ferrari, when he was in a position to, get podiums and stuff, which he did do. He's there at Alfa Romeo to support the team. He's had a really good year. As I say, in my opinion, my Kimi, reputation, my Kimi, how I see him is like skyrocketed. He's one of my favourite drivers now. Just because of the Alfa Romeo season, because as I say, I saw that and I was like, that's a great guy. Of all of the Bois and all of that, I know you did well at Ferrari, but 115 race thing it was before you won, and then you won again obviously in Austin, but you were taking up that seat. But then as soon as you went to Alfa, I was like, you were one of my favourite drivers now. If Fernando does a Kimi and he goes to the team to support them in this situation, again, being like a stocking filler, but obviously like a successful one, taking the seat obviously because Daniel's left, while Renault think of who they're going to have in. Because I know we say people like Quang Yu Zhou and Christian Lundgaard are ready for that seat, but maybe in the eyes of Renault, they think it's probably better that they stay in Formula 2 another season. Again, if Fernando is that, that's good for them. If he's there for experience, if he's there for exposure, it will be good, and he will get good results with the team because the car is not half too bad. But as you just said there, John, main thing, and like obviously we've said with Sebastian, and like we said with Kimi when he left Ferrari, if he's there for a championship winning car, there's no chance that car is going to be a championship winning car. Especially, I know it's only been one race, but especially now we are seeing teams like Racing Point and McLaren, and even AlphaTauri clawing at the top teams. Why would Renault be? Why would Renault now just suddenly go from the midfield to the top because of Fernando? He is going to be a good driver and he is going to do well, but as I say, he's not going to have a championship winning car, and very much so we're stuck here like we are with Seb, in the way that you're leaving the championship winning team to go somewhere else, and even though there's an option open, why would you go there to win the world championship? In terms of Fernando's chances this year, John, just starting off with the championship, of course, no way. I do think he'll help the team, but championship, no. And if that's why he's in Formula 1, there's going to be no chance. I think the patience thing is definitely something to remember, is definitely something to think. If he's here for a season or if he's here for 2, what can he achieve? Could be no Fernando wants to win now. I'm not saying he's the hungriest driver, because we all know there's drivers much hungrier than him. Max, Charles, and of course Lewis Hamilton going for 7. But Fernando does not want to be waiting around, and you can tell that from a mile away. You can tell that as soon as he did that 1,000-yard stare in Interlagos after he lost to Seb, you could tell right now Fernando Alonso's brain just clicked and it went, I've got to win. Everything I do, I've got to win, and it's got to be right now. And he'll be even more hungry from the Honda days, of course, at McLaren, the horrible times at them. So, as I say, good for Renault. Fernando, less so, but as I say, I'm just trying to work out where he is right now. Is he doing a Kimi Raikkonen supporting the team where he's got less pressure on him, and if that way he might actually gain more reputation from me next year? Or is he going there to win the World Championship and claw back what he wants? And if that's the case, then he's not going to, and that could hurt his psyche even more, because we could see more complaining on the radio, and we could just see one seat that didn't need to be filled by Fernando. So, John, moving on now. Obviously, I said there about the championship. I mean, I know no one's really thinking that. There's way too many drivers who are in the fight now. If we're going to do that, we may as well chuck in Latifi and Russell. Nicholas Latifi, 2021 world champion, get in there. I've spoiled it, even though we've already made our congratulations Nicholas Latifi video. Obviously, championship not happening. But how will he do? So, let's just stick with 2021. Fernando's in the car alongside Esteban, all that jazz. We've already talked about that. How will he do from Australia to Abu Dhabi? How will he do? How will he do against his teammate? And we're looking at a driver now, over a decade of experience, over 300 Grand Prix, as you said, over 30 victories. I think it's 6th place in the all-time F1 winners list. So, it's getting good standings from him, of course, the most successful Spaniard in F1, with another Spaniard, Carlos Sainz, who will be at Ferrari, of course, looking at him going, I used to look up at him. I did when I was climbing through. Now the roles are reversed. I'm actually ahead of him in terms of team-wise, but I'm still going to be looking at him because I look up to him. How is Fernando going to do at Renault? Is he going to help them? How's he going to do for Esteban and, of course, himself?
I think we'll see a lot. I think immediately we could see Alonso just as if he hasn't been away. Like, we possibly could see that as if like he's just come off a full season of Formula One and challenging for points in places like that. You've got to remember that Alonso has been away from Formula One for 2 seasons at the end of 2020, whenever that season will finish. And 2 years is a long time in Formula One. 1 year is a long time in Formula One. 2 years is a very long time in Formula One. So, is Alonso going to be, so at the pace to he once was back in the day? Is Alonso going to be there? Is Alonso going to be beating Esteban Ocon? We don't know that. We've seen drivers, come to the sport, leave, then come back, and they're not the same anymore. They're not the driver that they once were. They had little glimpses here and there, but they were never the same. But you could argue, right? Okay, but Kimi Raikkonen had 2 years away from Formula One, and when he came back, it was like he was never away. He had a really good car. He challenged Grosjean. I mean, to be fair, but Grosjean had an alright 2012. But still, he was on the podium. He was challenging for race wins. And like I said, that's after 2 years away in Formula One. He did go and do rally. Yeah, fine. It's a brilliant sport. It keeps your senses and your awareness very high. But it's not Formula One. And Alonso, he's done IndyCar. He's done endurance racing. He's done Dakar, and that's gonna keep that ball rolling. If he did nothing for 2 years, I'll be very concerned. Very concerned. No driver, nothing at all. Then it's like, okay, maybe he won't be the driver he is. But he's kept that mind active, so maybe he'll come into the sport and maybe just beat Ocon comfortably. And yeah, well, I'm just gonna. That's the only thing though, because Renault could build a brilliant car, and and Alonso could extract the best out of it, or they could build a terrible car and have a really bad, unreliable season. It's very hard to call at the moment. But actually, I'm going to flip the question, because talking about Alonso coming into the sport, like I said, for some fans it's good, and for some fans it is bad. Renault have looked over their driver academy again, which is it's a bit sad, because I've got a tweet here that someone tweeted us when we announced, when we shared Alonso was being, released, but going to be driving for Renault in 2021. Ari is called on Twitter. He says, between 2011 and 2020, this is the teams that have promoted their driver academies. So, teams that have promoted their drivers from their academies. So Red Bull, of course, they promoted 7 drivers in that 9 season period, or 10 season period. Ferrari have done 4. Mercedes have promoted 3. McLaren have promoted 3. Renault had promoted none. Concerning, isn't it? So, and again, it's a question that people keep asking. What's the point in the academy if you're not going to promote your drivers? Now, firstly of all, I do believe this because I've seen this before. If he was still here, Antoine Hubert would have got that seat. And I know that for a fact. So, maybe Antoine Hubert could have been the first, but unfortunately it's not, and it's really, really sad that he's not, he hasn't got the chance to get into that Renault seat because he would have done. He was really, really good and he could have got that seat. So, looking over now, Zhou and Lundgaard, they were the 2 names that were propping up all the time, and I think Zhou needs P3 in the standings to acquire a super license point, to get that full license points to go into Formula 1. So obviously Renault weren't going to wait around for him. They were like, no, we want a driver now. So, Lyle, do you think that's a bad thing that, once again, Renault have looked over their driver academies and went for, I would say, a short-term thing with Alonso, because he's not going to be there for another 5 years. I can guarantee that. He won't be there for another 5-6 years. Going for experience rather than going for youth and going, sticking with that same driver for potentially going off into the future. Because realistically, I can't see Ocon being at Renault for being the next guy to bring the team forward. They need someone in there who is going to bring that team forward in the next few years. And again, they've looked upon their drivers. So do you think that Renault should have gambled on a driver like Zhou, who is doing really well in the junior categories? See if he got them super license points, and seeing if how we would have done alongside Ocon for 2021. And ultimately should have Renault gambled and, like I said, promoted one of their junior drivers.
Yeah, exactly. The point of a junior program, as you said there, is to promote these drivers. When it was announced, we were all looking at, as I say, those drivers, and it was looking like one of those would take the reins. Again, it was a little bit like maybe the Mercedes when Nico Rosberg retired, and again we were looking at kind of the junior drivers, on the Mercedes junior program and things like that from Formula 2 and Formula 3. I mean, at the end of the day, that's why they're there, and all 10 teams have at least some input in those lower ranks. And we were looking at Wang Yuzhou and Christian Lundgaard to look like they were going to get promoted. Even, he wasn't on the card, but he was on my cards, and probably your cards, John, because you've met him. Jack Aitken, he used to drive for Renault in Formula 2. Of course, now he drives, he's still in Formula 2, obviously drives with the Williams Junior program as well. Again, I was even thinking he could be a name that's thrown around in there. We've also got Calderon as well, of course, the late Antoine Hubert's team, again, if we're talking about Antoine possibly getting signed, we maybe have to talk about her getting signed, and that would be the first female driver, I think, ever, which obviously would be a massive step forward, and obviously to get a driver on the grid, a female would obviously be a great step forward, and it'd be amazing to see. So there was names that could have been in there, but they looked somewhere where, to be honest, we weren't really expecting. And Jordan just going, I remember a long time episodes ago, I think it might have even been when Sebastian announced his retirement, maybe even before that, and obviously we were talking about Renault drivers, and I said Alonso, and I said that, and I even said that in the predictions last year, and I said that is kind of I'm half serious, half not, and I think I even said that in the video, because it would be okay to see, and it would be fun to see, like an old soul, an old name, and it does make Formula 1 more exciting. I mean, even if you're not a fan, like see on Instagram or something, you just see breaking news, Alonso returned, you think, that's incredible, that's exciting, because obviously there will be fans for him, as I say, the Renault days, the Ferrari days, even the McLaren Honda days, if you can believe that. So it was exciting to get him back, but I wasn't 100% serious, and I was thinking that it would be, well, to be honest, my opinion was it was going to be Christian Lundgaard. I think we made a video on him on the news, and as soon as that came out, I was like,
he's a good driver.
He is a great driver, and I'm really putting my eggs in his basket to get to Renault. Of course, you just said there about Wang Yuzhou not getting the super license points yet. There is obviously a very good, if not 100% certainty that he will get them this season, if not next season. I'm hoping that that's what they're doing, that they're just putting Fernando in for one season as a stock midfielder, but a season where he would be happy to do this for one season. And then obviously next year they do look at Christian Lundgaard, Wang Yuzhou, possibly Jack Aitken, possibly Calderon, and maybe some other driver. I mean, that's four great Formula 2 drivers in the mix. That would be great to choose from, obviously, those 4 drivers, instead of looking from the current grid or the previous grid, because that was one of those things in F1 that I always used to think, Why are we looking at the drivers who are in? It's not like the doors are closed and everyone just does a big circle like a parade ring. It doesn't work like that. Drivers can come in, drivers can come out, in, out, shit all about. So like it should work like that. Instead of just looking in Formula One, of course, who used to be a little bit like Nico Hülkenberg as well. Again, I think Jordan. I think if Nico Hülkenberg got signed, even though he hasn't won a race, even though he hasn't achieved nothing like Fernando Alonso has, we would still be sitting here right now and discussing, is Nico Hülkenberg the best person to come back? And I'll be saying the same thing. Yeah. Why have you looked over Formula 2 talent like Lundgaard and Joe? And why have you chosen Nico, who, remember, has driven for the team for many years and achieved, unfortunately, nothing? So yes, I hope Fernando was in here for maybe a year while people like Lundgaard and Joe build up the super license, build up the experience, and of course made it into Formula 1, but not just enter, make a massive splash. And that is also just one last thing, that is also maybe what Renault were doing. They're a team going through the midfield to the top, and as I just said there, they've done an incredible job building from the days of, obviously, I'll say, when Flavio kind of demolished the team, coming back in, I think it's 2016, so building them up from that, done a very good job. Cyril Abiteboul probably doesn't want someone, who is just learning the ropes. He probably wants a great driver who has experience. And while Fernando does his year in Formula 1, he knows what he's doing, Lundgaard and Joe, and maybe Calderon and Aiken can have a great season in F2, building even more experience, and then they can come into Formula 1 a much better driver with 1 year experience and of course a good super license with a good amount of points behind them. So that's my hopes. Jordan, obviously, what do you hope as well? Obviously, I know you follow people like Christian Lundgaard as well, and of course, as you said there, the late Antoine Hubert, he most likely would have been in that seat. But the four drivers that I've just said there, of course, Joe, Lundgaard, could say Aiken, and I think also you could look at Calderon as well. Could they be in the mix for a Renault seat in 2022? Is Fernando just here for a stock and filler? And have they made the right decision signing him for this year? What do you think?
I think having Alonso in a team like Renault, certainly going forward, like I've said before, it is beneficial for them because Alonso, like I said, brings a lot of experience. So clearly, Renault don't necessarily believe that their drivers in their academy are ready just yet. Because, like I said, it is going to be a short-term thing. Alonso being at Renault, it's not going to be a long-term thing where, is Alonso going to win a championship there? No. Is he going to win a race there? Might get a lucky one, but realistically, on pace, I can't really see it. But like I said, he could push Renault in the right direction, and as well. So obviously, if Renault didn't want one of their drivers, coming into like one of their younger drivers coming into the team because they didn't feel like they're ready, then they needed someone who had been in the sport before. So I think Renault was stuck with two choices essentially as a quick fix into the team. You had Nico Hülkenberg and you had Fernando Alonso. And out of the two drivers, I would choose Fernando Alonso because he's quick. He's quicker, he's got more experience, and he brings more to the table than what Nico Hülkenberg does. Because he was one of my predictions as well, because like I said, he's just been there recently, so he's just going to be quick settling, get him in for now, and then get someone, get him ready, get that seat ready for warmed up for like Joe or Lundgaard, whoever is ready at the time. So that's what I thought was going to happen in the first place. But I think as a driver and going as a for now, I think Alonso is probably the right move for Renault. I know drivers like Gasly and Bottas was also looked at, which they could have been good shouts as well. And if the deal had fallen through, then maybe they could have looked at potential drivers such as Bottas, Gasly, and of course Vettel's name was in the hat as well. But overall, really, I think I'm like I said, I'm not really buzzing that Alonso's back. I'm like, for me, Alonso, he's had his time now. I believe it would have been nice for someone else to take the reins and move on, and let Alonso just be like an F1 memory back in the day. But all right, yeah, I think going forward, I think it is a good choice for Renault. I think they have made an all right decision there, but making the right choice, and what we think now and paying off, two totally different things. It could work really, 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 really well, or it could be an utter disaster. But for me personally, yeah, I think this is a good move for now. But we'll have to wait and see what happens in the future. Lyle, what do you think about what do you think about that? Alonso, is it good for Renault that he is coming back to the team and of course to the sport, Formula One?
I think it's good. As I said there
No.
before, I think it's exciting. Just to see those breaking news statements that Alonso is back. Again, it comes back to maybe if. I know we always keep saying this about bringing new fans in. I know it's a weird thing to say, but you might not know Formula One, and you're probably not watching this if you don't want
No.
Formula One, or if you are, we are very blessed to have you on board for this random sport we all talk about. And if you're not welcome, we gather about Formula One. So no, but you might have heard about Fernando Alonso, and again, I'm just thinking about like Sky Sports News. You see that big yellow banner at the bottom. It says breaking news: Fernando Alonso was signed, and any sport that you really don't follow, so for example like tennis, you will know obviously the big names, Novak Djokovic, Rafael Nadal, Roger Federer, Andy Murray. When you see one of those four names, you know instantly that's going to be big news. And again, you might not follow tennis like I don't think Jordan does, and of course things like Wimbledon and that, but if you see Andy Murray in Wimbledon or Djokovic in any Open, if any of those names are linked, you think that's big news. And you see Fernando Alonso and Renault, you see the word return, and of course you see the word 2021 season for next year, you think it's massive news. And I think it's nothing but good. But Nico Hülkenberg, as I said there, John, is a little bit sad, that his name is now in the mix. I feel like now, he left Abu Dhabi, he turned into a little bit of a meme, but there was a bit of there was light at the end of the tunnel that he could have gone back to Renault. And of course that is not happening. But Sebastian Vettel, this is where I'm just going to end off, chuck it out to you as well. I said at the end of the breaking news video, Sebastian Vettel, a seat now closed up for him. So Jordan, just quickly, maybe a few words or something, maybe one word, maybe the word that we're all looking for you to say, and the R word that I'm expecting you to say. Sebastian Vettel, this hottest seat, his probably only seat to get, is gone. What's he going to do next year? What is he going to do next year, Jordan?
I think he might... I don't know, because I've said retire as well, which is probably the word you were looking for as well. I've said retire with Sebastian Vettel because I couldn't see him personally going to Renault. I can't see him going to Alfa Romeo. I can't see him going to Haas. There's two seats that he apparently in the works now as we're talking is certainly in the media about going back to Red Bull and Aston Martin. Those two are the options, but I don't know, I just think I've got that vibe that Vettel, maybe his time is done in Formula 1. Maybe he wants to take a step back and just live out family life. But if that hunger is still there and that adrenaline is still there and he's still addicted to it and he wants more, I think he could potentially stay. But I can't see him, I can't see where he's going to go next season. It's going to be very difficult. If they decide to chuck out Albon for Vettel, that's very harsh on Albon. If he goes to Aston Martin, I wouldn't be surprised. It would be a good option, a team on the rise. Going forward and having Vettel in the team alongside possibly Sergio Perez, I think that would be a really good mix. So we'll have to see how that goes. But it's either going to be retire for me or take a sabbatical and have a year out and see where everyone lands for 2022.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. The R word I was expecting you to say was retire. I mean, I know there's rumours, of course, Red Bull always floated about, but just before we record, it was obviously said there, again on the Twitter's feed came out and said, but Renault was an option, it's gone now, and I think that, like Nico Hülkenberg, we are sitting here and then we're thinking now, his cherries are gone and it is going to be retire. Let us know in the comment section below what do you think Sebastian Vettel will do, and also what do you think about Fernando Alonso? Was it the right decision to sign him for Renault? Was it not? And of course everything that we said in this episode. That is the end. Thank you very much for watching. If you do like what you see around here, please like and subscribe to the F1 Debate Show. We have so much more content coming your way throughout the 2020 season. Tomorrow is the Styrian Grand Prix round 2 of the No Fans 7-year anniversary. Very, very strange and quirky season we are in right now. We had an amazing Austrian Grand Prix, so let's hope that Austria again is as entertaining as that was. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time guys, we'll see you later.
See you later guys.